Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. What exactly is the condition of the President of the United States? It has been nearly a week since President Joe Biden was seen in public. Since then, he has dropped out of the presidential race via a bizarre letter that someone posted to his X account. We are told he will emerge from his Delaware home and return to the White House at some point this afternoon. He's expected now, just announcing, to address the nation tomorrow night from the Oval Office. Will that be live or on tape? We'll follow it and bring it to you. Plus, 10 days after the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, and hours after one of the most disastrous, maybe the most disastrous, hearing ever held on Capitol Hill, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle has resigned. I mean, her forced resignation was even more strong-armed than Joe Biden's from his second campaign. I mean, both of them had to be forced out under pain of God knows what. Both Democrats and Republicans, she united them all. I mean, she's kind of a miracle worker if you think about it. She appeared before the House Oversight Committee yesterday, declining to answer virtually any of the very basic questions from lawmakers, like how many agents were protecting Mr. Trump? Who decided the security perimeters? Why weren't Secret Service agents aware of the threat until seconds before the gunfire started? She was, as I mentioned, pummeled by both sides.
Director Cheadle's leadership, we question whether anyone is safe. Not President Biden, not the First Lady, not the White House, and certainly not the presidential candidate.
Because Donald Trump is alive, and thank God he is, you look incompetent. If Donald Trump had been killed, you would have looked culpable.
At this point, and I think that the director has lost the confidence of Congress.
You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Do you really genuinely in your heart believe that you being in this role is what's right for America at this moment?
Ma'am, you are a DEI horror story.
I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace, and you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
She did a stint doing private security for Pepsi, hence the reference there. So she's out. But what now? Does that resolve it? Are we good now on the Secret Service and the attempted assassination that took a man's life and almost took the life of our president, our former president, Donald Trump? My first guest today has been talking to whistleblowers in this investigation who say law enforcement was stationed on the roof on which the shooter positioned himself, but they abandoned it because it was too hot. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri joins me now. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. You ever think to yourself, how can I work this hard and still be in debt? It's depressing. The piles of overdue bills and the threatening phone calls and the sick feeling in your stomach, and then you never have any money to do anything. Look, if you're trapped in debt, and trust me, I have also been there, Done with Debt can be a way out. They have developed aggressive new strategies to end your debt permanently. Done with Debt stands between you and your harassing bill collectors. They tirelessly negotiate with your creditors to lower or even forgive what you owe. And they do it all without bankruptcy or new loans. One client said, one phone call saved us a fortune. I wish we did this long ago. Done with Debt has unique strategies to get you out of debt faster and put more money in your pocket every month. But you do need to hurry because some debt solutions are time sensitive and you don't want to miss out. Visit donewithdebt.com. Speak with one of their debt relief strategists for free. You have nothing to lose except your debt. Go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. Senator, great to see you again. What?
You. Yeah, it's absolutely insane, Megyn. It's insane. Here's what the whistleblowers, the latest whistleblowers, we've had a number of them come forward to my office. Here's what the latest said just yesterday, that in fact, law enforcement had designated at least one individual, maybe more, but at least one, whose job it was to be on the roof, not in the vicinity, not around, on the roof. And this person, I don't know if it was a he or a she, but this person, according to the whistleblower, decided, oh, it's awfully hot that day. And so they abandoned their post, never went back to the roof. And that is why the roof was left wide open. It wasn't because of the slope, contrary to what the former Secret Service director said. No, it was because this law enforcement individual just didn't want to be on there. But Megyn, there's more. Whistleblowers also tell me that law enforcement were supposed to be patrolling the perimeter of that same building. I've been there, Megyn. I've seen it myself. I went last week. I took my own team because I don't trust any of these people to give us the truth. It's American Glass Research Building number 6. Megyn, it's a low roof. You've seen it. We've all seen it now in pictures. It's a low-slung building. There was supposed to be law enforcement patrolling the perimeter. They weren't doing it either. Instead, because of the heat again, whistleblowers tell me that law enforcement went inside the building. So you got the roof abandoned, you got law enforcement inside the building in the air conditioning, and you have the building essentially open. And Megyn, sometimes it's hard to see from the pictures, but I can tell you, having been there, there are air conditioning units, really large air conditioning units on either side of that building. It's easy to get on that roof. I mean, it really is. It's a single story. Any able-bodied individual could hop up on the air conditioning unit and hop up right onto the roof. You wouldn't even need a ladder. If you had a ladder, it would be super easy. Any 20-year-old kid, which is what the shooter was, who he was, could certainly do it. Law enforcement, according to whistleblowers, Megyn, left the building totally defenseless.
Oh, this is awful. When we say law enforcement, do we mean local law enforcement as distinct from Secret Service?
Yeah, so this is the whistleblower said to me that Secret Service had asked local and or state law enforcement to handle this and that they failed to do so. Now, I will just note, Megyn, that there's a lot behind the scenes here and not so behind the scenes in public. There's a lot of attempts at blame shifting, and I'm even getting it from whistleblowers. We've got whistleblowers from Secret Service world who are coming forward and saying it's the locals' fault. And then I've spoken to local law enforcement whistleblowers from that said, don't blame us. It's the Secret Service's fault. The Secret Service didn't even show up the way they were supposed to for the walkthrough plan with local law enforcement. So it is unclear to me. This is why we need the facts. This is ridiculous. You've got law enforcement on both sides pointing the fingers at each other. You've got a former Secret Service director who would take no responsibility. But bottom line is this. Somebody was supposed to be on that roof. Somebody was supposed to be guarding that building. Nobody did either.
So the local law enforcement is delegated this task, and Secret Service, for some reason, put it outside the perimeter of the responsible area that Secret Service would have to look after. And then it seems like they washed their hands of it. I mean, we had a former Secret Service guy on the show a couple days ago who was saying it doesn't matter whether it was inside or outside the perimeter. Ultimately, it is the Secret Service's responsibility. And if you're going to delegate it to local law enforcement, it's still your responsibility to make sure that it's well protected. That, plus the fact that we know Kim Cheadle lied about the reason they weren't up there was a sloped roof isn't safe, tells me they're running scared. They know it was on them. And then we get her performance yesterday, which, yes, ultimately led to her being forced out over her strong objection. But why wouldn't she give any names? I realize there's probably going to be a public pylon when we figure out who put the area outside of the, Secret Service perimeter and so on. But them's the facts. Like, that's life. So why can't we get actual specifics?
Well, we need actual specifics, and the reason I think is that nobody wants to be responsible for anything. Secret Service doesn't want to be responsible. DHS doesn't want to be responsible. Let me highlight something else that a whistleblower has told me, Megyn, and that is there were more DHS, Department of Homeland Security, more Homeland Security personnel there that day, working the rally that day, than Secret Service agents. And this is because Secret Service is so overstretched. They had so many other events going that they didn't have enough people to actually cover the rally. So the majority, the preponderance, most of the agents there that day, the federal agents, were from Homeland Security. They weren't prepared for this event. They were not ready to do their jobs. They were supposed to be doing things like using canines at the entrance to sweep people, going through the crowd. They were supposed to be guarding the area around the platform. They were supposed to be coordinating with locals. And whistleblowers tell me they weren't doing any of these things. So, Megyn, we've got failure at every single level. I mean, every level you look at here, Secret Service wasn't coordinating this properly. Secret Service allowed Trump to go on stage. Secret Service didn't have the right plan in place. DHS was unprepared. They didn't know what they were doing. State and local law enforcement officials were just out there on their own, not sure what they were supposed to be doing, maybe not doing their job. I mean, every piece of this is a total disaster.
the House Oversight hearing yesterday saying that the officers involved at that particular facility were Butler Emergency Services. And God knows what their training was. Who knows whether they had the training or the experience to understand how to protect a former president who we knew was under threat, or who they should have known was under threat. So now you have Kim Cheadle forced out as a result of the embarrassing performance yesterday, in addition to the failures that kicked this whole thing off. And you've got Joe Biden's reaction as follows in a paper statement. Who knows whether this is really from him. She has selflessly dedicated and risked her life to protect our nation throughout her career in the U.S. Secret Service. We especially thank her for answering the call to lead the Secret Service during our administration. We're grateful for her service to our family. As a leader, it takes honor, courage, and incredible integrity to take full responsibility for an organization tasked with one of the most challenging jobs in public service. And then they go on to say the independent review to get to the bottom of what happened on July 13th continues, and I look forward to assessing its conclusions. That's pretty remarkable. He does not come anywhere near throwing her under the bus. I don't know that this gets it done, Senator. What do you think?
No, it doesn't. I mean, and by the way, she did none of those things. The things he just said in his statement there, honor, service, responsibility. She didn't take any responsibility. We all watched the hearing. And by the way, she had briefed senators before that hearing, 5 days ago now, 6 days ago. She briefed senators in a closed-door briefing. Megyn, she was exactly in that briefing as she was yesterday. She was unprepared, she was ill-informed, and she was totally unwilling to take any responsibility. She didn't know basic facts 6 days ago. She didn't know basic facts yesterday. If the president really wanted to show some leadership, he should have fired her. He should have said, this is totally unacceptable. I never should have appointed you. You're fired. But of course, this guy won't fire anybody. I mean, let's think back to Afghanistan, where we lost 13 brave service members and hundreds of American civilians left behind to the enemy. Who did he fire after that? Nobody. No accountability. Here we have an American president shot, another good American killed, multiple others critically wounded. Nobody will take any responsibility. It is a sickness in this administration.
Mm-hmm. And when she got up there yesterday, it seemed clear she had things she wanted to hide. There was just one example. I mean, we can go through more of them, but there was the example of how the Secret Service lied on the record about denying President Trump's requests for additional security. I mean, my own suspicion is they thought it was a vanity play. They thought maybe he was just self-aggrandizing. I don't know. That's my speculation. But they did repeatedly deny him additional resources for protection. And now we know, of course, he did have reason to fear for his life. And they denied it on the record, both when Dan Bongino alleged it, when Susan Crabtree of Real Clear Politics alleged it. And then they were pressed, Director Cheadle was pressed yesterday on the fact that she signed off on those lies, that she would have had to approve her spokesperson, Anthony Guglielmi, in the lies that he told. And here was a bit of that exchange with Florida Representative Mike Waltz in SOT 24.
Did you sign off on that spokesman's statement?
The spokesman's statement, I believe, was related to requests that were made.
Did you sign off on it?
For the requests that were made at the rally.
Did you sign off on the statement before it went out? I sign off on my press spokesman's statement before they go out. I would hope you would in the wake of an assassination attempt.
Yes.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
Categorically false that any requests were made. You signed off on it. Thank you for that. Thank you for that clarity.
So here's the thing, Senator. What that tells me is that even in the wake of an assassination attempt in which a man died, she's not even, at best, she was in error, right? So she's not even checking her facts and being careful in the messaging around something as critical as whether they denied Trump's requests or not, which seems like just a massive political CYA effort by Kim Cheadle and those who work for her.
Yeah, 100%. You take the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what this is. That's what I thought when I first heard her brief senators a week ago. And listen, the other person, Megyn, who is the big liar here and has lied in public repeatedly is Alejandro Mayorkas. Mayorkas, remember, went on, I believe, the Sunday morning talk shows and said, oh, actually, we had beefed up Trump's security. We had given him even more than he requested. There was a threat from Iran, and therefore we'd given even more, and we were tracking this. That's all false. That is just not true. They did not give them the security they requested. His security was not beefed up. That's just an out-and-out lie. And by the way, Mayorkas, head of DHS, he should be on the hook here too. He was overseeing this entire operation. So far, he hasn't even appeared before Congress, let alone taking responsibility.
So this guy's basically got control in quotes, of the border and of the Secret Service. And it's not going very well. When is he getting hauled before Congress?
Yeah, hopefully soon. Hopefully next week. The Senate is going to hold hearings on this next week. And Alejandro Mayorkas had better be there. It's the Committee on Homeland Security. I sit on that committee. He had better be there under oath because, sure, Cheadle's the director of the Secret Service. She deserves to go. He's in charge, though, I emphasize, Mayorkas, of the whole operation. He oversees the whole thing. The Secret Service agents who were there, that's his brief. The DHS detailees who were there at the rally, and I'm told now by whistleblowers that DHS personnel are often getting assigned to these events. He oversees them as well. The whole thing is his responsibility. And Megyn, he has lied and lied and lied. And you're right, that's before we even get to the border where he lies for a living. This guy is bad news. He's already been impeached by the House. He should have been removed by the Senate. The Democrats didn't even hold a trial. Now we can see what a mistake that was on his watch. 9-10 million illegals have come into this country, and an American president has suffered an assassination attempt. This guy's got to go.
What we've seen is that he's not keeping us safe. He didn't keep Trump safe. He didn't keep this poor fire chief safe who got killed at the Trump rally, Compertori. The two people who were shot. He didn't keep the border safe and the women who have been killed and raped and the men as well who are the victims. He didn't keep the people who got the fentanyl into their veins as a result of the border situation. I mean, this guy he should not be in a position of protecting us. That's obvious with Mayorkas. Here's the other question I have for you, though, because she deferred yesterday, Kim Cheadle, many times to the FBI. Well, the FBI this, the FBI that. And we already know there are a lot of questions about the FBI. Many Americans don't trust the FBI at this point, given their role in Russiagate and all that nonsense. She knew answers, according to her, that she'd been given by the FBI, which she says is investigating. Meanwhile, it's her service. These are her employees, but she's claiming to get the info from the FBI. And she wouldn't give it up, as though there's some sort of attorney-client privilege between the Secret Service director and the FBI, which there isn't. Let me show you this exchange and ask what's next for the FBI piece of this probe, SOT 28.
Have you been in communication with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
With whom?
I speak with the director and the deputy director.
Okay. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
They have shared with me the evidence.
Did they share with you how many shell casing were on the roof?
Yes.
Okay. How many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for
how
their investigation.
Many were there?
And their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct? If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up? What are you hiding, my friend?
I'm not covering anything up.
Then why can't you answer a simple question?
Okay, so what happens to her now? Does she just go off quietly into the night? And then the second piece of it is, what happens with the FBI? Like, why do they have sole knowledge of what's happening in this investigation?
Well, Megyn, I can tell you as to the FBI, one of the reasons I went to the site myself last week is because I don't trust them to do anything. And I will tell you, when I got there to Butler, to the site, the FBI tried to run me off as quick as they possibly could. When I went to that building that we've been talking about, the American Glass Research Building, the FBI came out onto the property. And by the way, I had been given permission by local security to be there, the folks who have authority over the building. FBI comes out, Megyn, and tells me I have to leave. And I said, excuse me? I mean, what authority do you have to tell me that I have to leave? And they said, oh, we're doing an investigation. We'll give you the report later, but you can't be here. You have to go. That told me a lot right there, which is they want to control the information flow, Megyn. They want to control the facts and the details here. And you saw it yesterday. You saw this, it looks like an agreement between the Secret Service and the FBI to try to punt this and let the FBI control all of the information, let them control when they release it, and let them control the narrative. They don't have the authority to do that, Megyn, and we should not allow them. We should not acquiesce to that at all. Listen, if they want to do an investigation, that's fine, but that should not be the end of the inquiry for the American people. And the FBI director, he needs to come to Congress. He needs to be under oath. He needs to answer questions.
Yes. My team telling me, because the local law enforcement now, state police commissioner, they're on the hot seat this afternoon. State police commissioner just said during the hearing he believes there 8 casings were found on top of that roof, and that would mean that 8 shots were fired by the shooter in this case. It's interesting to me the FBI tried to run you off. They messed with the wrong senator. Not only did they not understand, apparently you're a United States senator, but you have long history in your own branch of law enforcement as the former attorney general for your state, chief clerk for Roberts, right? On the U.S. Supreme Court. I always forget who you're. Yeah, exactly. So
right.
Wrong guy. So speaking of your legal background, let me ask you about another person who's got a toe in the legal world, and that is Kamala Harris. She rose to fame as the Attorney General for the state of California, prior to that, DA for San Francisco. And now she is obviously going to be the Democrats' choice for president. I wonder what you think of the attempt to remake Kamala Harris, to take all of the awkward moments we've seen multiple times and rebrand them as she's the fun, quote, wine aunt. She's just a little, quote, goofy, like in a cool way that the kids are going to relate to. And the same people who took her sort of tough on crime years as San Francisco DA and used it against her, right, when she was seeking higher office, now are looking at her as having called, Jacob Blake some sort of a hero, as having done fundraising for BLM arrestees who are in jail. Looking at all of it over the past couple of days, I'm left asking myself, who is Kamala Harris?
If I had her record, if I had let 10 million illegals across the border, which she did as border czar, if I had her record on crime, if I had her record as a United States senator, if I had her positions wanting to shut down oil and gas production in this country, wanting to shut down American energy, wanting to make us dependent on China, yeah, I'd try to rebrand too. I would rush to rebrand, which is what she's doing. Listen, here's the thing that really gets me, though. I don't think it matters who the puppet is at the head of the Democrat ticket. It looks like it is going to be Kamala. But the truth is, we all know who's really in charge. It's the same people who chose Joe. They're the same people who are choosing Kamala. And you can see it. We've all seen it on display the last few weeks. It's Wall Street. It's the biggest corporations, and it's Hollywood. They're the ones who selected Joe. They're the ones who shoved Joe out when he wasn't useful to them anymore. And now they're the ones anointing Kamala. Look at her kitchen cabinet. It is full of those people. This has been widely reported. They are going to pull the strings in a Kamala Harris administration. So I think the choice is going to be really simple. Do you want somebody who actually was chosen by voters, Donald Trump? Do you want somebody who actually will work for voters, Donald Trump, and somebody who's beholden to nobody? Listen, I know some people out there, they don't like Trump, but what you can't argue with is he's not beholden to anybody. I mean, who is Trump beholden to? What big donor is he in the pocket of? None. So like him or hate him, he's his own guy, as he has made abundantly clear. Kamala Harris, she's just at the mercy of the latest rebrand, at the whim of these folks, the wealthiest people in America, the most powerful people in America, the Democrat Party power brokers. They're going to totally control her. And it's going to be a choice between a strong, independent executive or a party puppet.
It's an interesting point, because given the way that she's gotten this nomination, well, I mean, she hasn't gotten it yet, but of course she's on track. Who will she owe the favors to? Who really would be in charge of Kamala Harris? Would it be, an enfeeble or an incapable Joe Biden? Would it be Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer? Would she be her own person, or wouldn't she? Very interesting development today. Benjamin Netanyahu is coming to the United States. He's supposed to meet with President Joe Biden, who canceled on him. Allegedly, I guess because of his illness, though he is going back to the White House, though it does not look like he rescheduled the meeting. And Kamala Harris, rather than take a meeting with Netanyahu, is skipping it because she's got to go to a meeting of her former sorority out of state. Now, I will tell you, Senator Hawley, before getting ready for the show, some of my gal pals down here at the shore said, do you want to meet and play some pickleball? And I said, gee, that's something I would really like to do, but I have a job that I need to go do, so it's a no. And now, why can't Kamala Harris go? Isn't it likely that this is an intentional snub?
Yeah, of course it is. She's not going because her party base is full of radical pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic people. I mean, let's just be honest. The people who crowded into those college campuses, who occupied the buildings, who broke windows, lit fires, tore down statues, waved the Hamas flag, who went after, not just insulted Jewish Americans, that is protected by the First Amendment, though it may be despicable. No, these are the people who threatened Jewish American students, who'd said death to Israel, who told Jewish American students they wouldn't be safe, who assaulted them physically. These are all Democrats. I mean, these are the people who Kamala is now trying to appeal to. So yeah, she's not going to meet with Bibi Netanyahu. She can't afford to politically. And I tell you what, I'm sure you're following, Megyn, her own VP search now. And it's amazing to me to read the commentary on some of these folks, including the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro, who's Jewish. You've seen all this commentary from Democrats saying, oh my gosh, you can't pick him. Why not? Oh, he's Jewish. I mean, we can't have that. This is where we are in today's Democrat Party. And by the way, that is the wing of the party, if you like, that Kamala totally represents. I mean, that is where she comes from. It's the radical progressives. These are the people out there with their Hamas flags, out there chanting death to Israel. And that's who she is. That's what she's going to bring. You want to know the kind of energy she'd bring to the White House? There it is, right there.
Meantime, Joe Biden is returning to the White House, we believe, any moment from Delaware. We haven't seen him in almost a week. We have no idea what his state is, physical or mental. He did call into a Kamala Harris announcement yesterday. It was her first public appearance as the, presumptive, I guess we can say, nominee, and sounded okay, not terrible. It didn't sound well. And yet he still hasn't made his actual I'm withdrawing announcement on camera. She got to the cameras before he did. We're hearing tomorrow night. He'll make this primetime address. Again, I don't know whether it's live or on tape. And it just hit via Washington Post that he's rescheduled his meeting with Netanyahu for Thursday afternoon, allegedly. So what do you understand to be the state of wellness when it comes to our president? And what do you think the likelihood is this guy makes it straight through to January?
Seems to me, Megyn, we're basically without a president right now. I mean, as you said, he hasn't been seen in public in a week. He's not meeting with foreign leaders. He is not carrying out his duties. He delegated last night. He delegated a whole bunch of duties to various cabinet departments and agencies. I mean, this is crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. And what you can see is the Democrats, they don't care about any of that. They just want to offload Joe Biden the political liability. The fact that he is not fit to run this country, the fact that America, as we sit here now, is essentially without a chief executive, they don't care. What are they doing? They're busy. Kamala's off in campaign mode. If she were serious, she would be saying, listen, Joe needs to step down. We need a president in office. He is not capable of the job. But none of them are saying that, Megyn, not a one of them. And that's because it's all politics to them, 100% politics. And if that means that the country is adrift and unsafe, I mean, who has the nuclear codes right now? What would happen if China invaded Taiwan right now? What would happen if, heaven forbid, there were a strike on American forces or American civilians, either at home or somewhere around the world? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know who would be in charge. Nobody knows who would be in charge. We just know it wouldn't be Biden. I mean, this is an untenable position.
What's scarier to you? That happens while Joe Biden is, I don't know, out to lunch, or it happens when we have a newly sworn in, very green President Harris? Like over the next couple of months, I'm saying, if Biden gets 25th Amendmented or something else.
I think that both are disastrous options, to be honest with you. I mean, and it just shows you that this is where the Democrats have taken the country. And it's because they have cared 100% about politics and not at all about the safety of America. You mentioned American safety a few minutes ago. You're dead right. I mean, listen, our kids aren't safe in the streets. Our rally goers aren't safe going to political events. You're not safe if you go to the grocery store, go to the bus stop. You're not safe anywhere in this country for anything. And now, if you live overseas, if you're traveling, nobody's safe. And we don't even know who the president is. Megyn, I just think that this is, in my adult lifetime, I got to think that this is the most dangerous moment for America, because we are surrounded by threats and dangers at home and abroad, and we don't have anybody who is in charge of this country. And of course, our Constitution gives a lot of power to the executive. And right now, the lights are out, nobody's at home.
About a week ago, before he withdrew, Joe Biden, in what felt like a desperate move to save himself, announced that he was going to be making major announcements for reform of the U.S. Supreme Court, that he wanted to introduce term limits. And of course, no federal judge is subject to a term limit. It's a lifetime appointment. That he wanted to introduce a mandatory ethics code. This is, of course, about the controversy that they've generated around Justice Thomas and the fake controversy around Justice Alito as well. So do you think there's any chance of those things actually happening?
If the Democrats were to win control of the Senate or hold control of the Senate, yeah, I think that they would. I mean, this is the real danger here, Megyn. If the Democrats have become radicalized, if they maintain a majority in the United States Senate and they elect a Democrat president, Kamala Harris, I think they will eliminate the filibuster, and I think they will do whatever they can legislatively. You know, they can't do term limits. That would require a constitutional amendment, but they could absolutely make all kinds of changes. They could cut the justices' salaries. They could interfere in the independence of the Supreme Court. They could change the number of justices packed the court. They could do all that by legislation, and I think they absolutely will. These people are nuts. And just what you described a second ago, that so-called agenda, let's be clear about what this is. This is a deliberate attempt to destroy the independence of an independent branch of government, a deliberate attempt to destroy the independent judiciary because they don't like the judiciary, they don't like the independence, and any institution, Megyn, that stands in the way of the Democrats' agenda, they just burn it down, they just bulldoze it. And that's what they want to do down at the Supreme Court. And what's really scary is their base is out there cheering them on and saying, absolutely, go take on the court, go bulldoze the court, go destroy the court. For those of us who believe in the rule of law, my gosh, this is the time to say, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's protect America here.
She's on camera saying she is in favor of eliminating the filibuster. And that's because she wants to get through the Green New Deal, which, you know, according to her plan, she's one of the co-sponsors. We'll get rid of our airplanes and our cars and our cows. So she wants to get rid of the filibuster just for that. Never mind what they would do to the court if she actually managed that in some sort of electoral landslide, which at this point, let's face it, does not look likely. Senator, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Josh Hawley of Missouri, everybody. When we come back, a deep dive into Vice President, possibly President, Kamala Harris. Some Americans enjoy using their credit cards because it can be a hassle-free and secure way to pay. But our sponsor, the American Payments Coalition, says that some DC politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. Now, they say that this bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that could jeopardize your data security and your rewards. They say corporate megastores will make more money, and you could wind up paying the price. Find out more information at guardyourcard.com and consider telling Congress to guard your card while you're there, too. Kamala Harris is now on track to become the next Democratic nominee for president, and they did it just like this. It's so fun when you have a magic wand and your name is Nancy Pelosi. You can make people like the presidential candidate. It's awesome. The voters are so annoying. It's like amazing to me that we've all just moved on from the fact that really they've just seized the Democratic nomination. They've given it to Kamala Harris. Not a single voter has voted for this woman to be the presidential candidate on the Democratic ticket. And they're all like, okay, I guess we're not allowed to challenge the black lady. That's how it works. Like that's a no in the Democratic Party, so we have to keep our mouths shut. Even though if you look at the polls, this is not the best person to take on Trump. I mean, if you're a Trump fan, you're thrilled, I guess. You know, it's like short of Biden, sure, they'll take Kamala. But if you're an actual Democrat who wants to win, is this the horse you want to bet on? But they're all just going along with it because they need unity, because the Republican Party's unified. This is some sort of bullshit. But okay, you know what? It's your problem. I'm not voting Democrat. So you work it out over on your side. It's going to be fun to watch. She's not doing well. We'll get to the polls in just a bit. But the media is so thrilled that they got rid of the elderly, infirm man who they were defending, saying all those videos showing him looking bad were just cheap fakes 2 weeks ago, that they have magically now forgotten all about who she is. She's got to be the second coming, you see. She's got to be the one who unifies the party. She's got to be reinvented. She's not awkward. She's wine aunt, which, by the way, how is that a thing that's good? Like, I wouldn't want to be known as wine aunt. It's not a plus. It's not a good rebranding. Instead, they have been jumping out of their seats in excitement and praising the little twinkle in her eye. Watch.
I'm jumping out of my seat over here watching this. I think people have been thirsting for this.
And I'll just say this, you know, and I'm with Tim. I'm jumping out of my seat higher than you, my brother. I'm just going to say that.
There was a twinkle in her eye. There was a kick in her step that, you know, when you're vice president, you know, you're not loose. You can't, you know, there's somebody above you. There's somebody, you don't want to overshadow them. And this was quite the coming out. And I got chills when she said, Donald Trump, I know your type. I was blown away. I was like, I kind of fell in love with her. I thought she was smart, engaging. She's funny, feisty, twinkle in your eye, punch you in the gut. I mean, everything you kind of want. And I just thought it was a great, great opening act.
She looked completely comfortable tonight with the words she was speaking. They felt organic and genuine.
Look completely comfortable with the words she was speaking. Well, that's a win. And wokeness on X put that together. Great account to follow. Well, we have not forgotten who Kamala really is, and neither has Charlie Spiering. He's author of Amateur Hour, Kamala Harris in the White House. We had him back on the show in January, episode 705, if you want to go for the full deep dive. It was his first interview about the book, and we have him back today for obvious reasons. Charlie, welcome back. So the problem with Kamala Harris not resonating with voters is when you're vice president, you're not loose. But now she can be loose and her full, wonderful, able to connect self. What do you make of that?
That's right, Megyn. Well, I hated to interrupt my heavy research into what the true meaning of brat means, because that's what cable news hosts are grappling with right now. Kamala Harris is a brat, according to Gen Z. It's all over the internet, and she's completely remaking herself, as you just described, as a wine mom. It's a familiar thing. Saturday Night Live famously, during her presidential primary, tried to describe her as the cool aunt, Kamala Harris. So here we go. The final reboot.
Wine mom is fun, and you actually do want to sit down and have a drink with her. Kamala Harris is a bully who's pushed out or made life intolerable for virtually every person who's come to work for her in the White House. She's the Meghan Markle of the administration. People can't work for her. She's a nightmare. So we're going to be hearing more about the mass staff exodus that we've seen under her tenure. Are we not?
That's right, Megyn. Actually, I'm working on a story right now. The story I'm really working on is the massive shift in her original campaign staff. There's only about 4 people left from her original campaign staff in 2021. It's been a complete blender, not a revolving door anymore. It's like a blender. And staffers have been fleeing in droves. They recall her as being a bully and someone who is mean-spirited, making all kinds of comments about how they appear, how they look, their love life, and that's the kind of behavior that former Kamala Harris staffs are reminded of, and that's why there's not exactly a massive line of people trying to jump and go work for her again.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's obviously going to become relevant, how she treats people. She's not wine mom. She's like the nasty mom who doesn't get invited to the events because no one wants to be around her because she's got a bad demeanor behind the scenes. Now, that comment we were making fun of is that when you're vice president, you can't be loose. Forgive me, but speaking of loose, it is fair game to go back and talk about her behavior in her ascent into politics. We touched on this a bit yesterday, and I will not be shamed out of discussing this by people who say it's slut shaming or it's not relevant. It is relevant when a young candidate tries to sleep her way into politics and into power. And that is what it appears Kamala Harris did when she was a young political aspirant in San Francisco, when she had an affair with a man 30 years older than she was. She was 29 to 30 and he was 60, Willie Brown, who was like the godfather of San Francisco politics and very well known. And sure enough, that relationship paid dividends for her in more ways than one.
That's right, Megyn. As you noted yesterday, it's completely fair game to talk about Willie Brown. It's how Kamala Harris went from a relatively unknown Alameda County prosecutor to the forefront of San Francisco social life and politics. Willie Brown was the most powerful politician in California when Kamala Harris started dating him. And he also gave her a number of positions. We're talking about $400,000 back in the 1990s. That's almost $800,000 in today's money. He appointed her to those positions that paid her lucratively. He gave her the keys to a BMW. And he went around the most powerful and most wealthy circles of San Francisco and California politics with Kamala Harris on his arm, opening up the doors to her professional and political future.
So it was back when, again, she was 30 years old. He was at the time Democratic Speaker of the California State Assembly, quoting here from a Washington Examiner piece, which is very good. The position that he gave her on the California Medical Assistance Commission in 1994 paid at that time over $70,000 a year, which is about $120,000 in current money. And she served on the board until 1998, so about 4 years. That medical commission met twice a month. So for 2 meetings a month, she was getting the equivalent of $120,000. And you know why Democrats in San Francisco were mad about it? It wasn't because she wasn't qualified, which she wasn't. It was because those positions are supposed to be saved for only the most prized Democrats who Willie Brown really owed favors to, who did really, amazing things to keep Willie Brown in power. But instead, he gave one to his lover. He was, by the way, still married, though he was reportedly estranged from his wife for a long time. So, this was technically an extramarital relationship. And they were mad that he gave one of his choice grifting positions, not to somebody who'd done a lot for Democratic politicians, but to Kamala Harris. And not just that, there was another one. He gave her a second position as well, which was basically the same kind of deal, where he just gave her an appointment. She reeked in tons of money, and boom, Bob's your uncle. She was off to the races in Dem politics. And then Willie Brown is on record as saying, I also then helped her with her next big position, which was becoming San Francisco DA.
Right. When she ran for district attorney, they had broken up. Willie Brown, as soon as he ran and won the San Francisco mayor election, he broke up with Kamala. And then, Kamala was there for the victory party. But by the time the inauguration hit, his estranged wife reappeared to be holding the Bible while he took the oath of office. And Kamala was kind of pushed aside. But Willie Brown didn't forget her. When Kamala decided to run for district attorney of San Francisco, he was there quietly nudging all of his wealthy donors and powerful connections to help her out. Him and Terrence Holland, the existing district attorney, were not friends anymore. They had kind of had an ugly clash. And Kamala Harris likewise tried to overthrow Holland's second in command, but failed miserably. And so she ended up leaving the office to kind of plot her revenge. So Willie Brown was definitely there behind the scenes, but Kamala Harris did as much as she could before the election to distance herself from Willie Brown. At one point, doing a very long interview with San Francisco magazine, throwing him under the bus entirely, saying, Willie Brown's career is over. He's done. Hello. My turn is here. It's Kamala Harris. Sounds really familiar, Megyn, compared to what just happened last weekend.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole Democratic Party is going to be stepping all over Joe Biden momentarily. He's going to get his weekend in the sun about what a lion he is. And then as soon as they realize that they can blame everything on him and take it off of Kamala, that's what they're going to do. Every inflation number you've seen, it's all his fault. She didn't touch it. She was just a lowly vice president. What was she supposed to do? But talk to me a little bit about her background, because if she rose in San Francisco and then California, right, as the attorney general, and then became a U.S. senator from California, all she's had to do is compete, for the most part, I know there's some exceptions, against other liberals, right? Like, has she ever had to compete against a bull, like Donald Trump, like the silverback gorilla, like Donald Trump, Republican versus Dem? It's on. I realized that she ran as the vice president, but she wasn't the chief. That was really Joe Biden's fight.
Well, the interesting race is when she ran against Steve Cooley for the attorney general position in 2010. Cooley was a relatively sensible law and order Republican from Los Angeles, and really the last meaningful Republican in California politics. And even it was a big year for Democrats. They won by double digits for California Democrats. But Kamala Harris really struggled against Steve Cooley and barely edged out a victory. It looked like the night of the election that she had lost. And lo and behold, weeks later, they did recounts and recounted all the rest of the votes, and she just barely squeaked off a victory. It was really close. And you can definitely look at that campaign and see that, maybe she will be competitive in this race against Donald Trump as well. But it's hard to see that happening.
Some are now trying to excuse her awkwardness, repeated and everywhere, as she lost her footing as vice president and didn't have the confidence required to really be herself, which I guess is this secret version of charming. Is there anything in her past that would shed light on what's true about her? Has she always been awkward like this, with the weird laughing and the inappropriate jokes and every time the failed attempts at profundity?
Yeah, a lot of it's the product of being a California politician, right? When you're a California Democrat, all you have to do is impress the donors, impress the political power brokers, and kind of show up and demand a seat at the table. Willie Brown taught her how to do that. So she did have some level of that with the top donors, but she never really connected with the California people. But as we've shown earlier, you don't necessarily need to convince voters. You just need to convince the Democratic Party, and everything will fall in line for you pretty well. So
Boy,
what's
that pattern repeated itself.
Her,
Sorry, keep going, Charlie.
Yeah. And so the same thing happened when she ran for Senate. She's a very good candidate. She's very disciplined. She loves the sort of the knife fighting and the brawling. She's on the record saying she loves California politics because it's a real fight. So she is a sort of a ruthless politician, a ruthless campaigner. But after after taking office, there's definitely a drop down. Once you actually have to do the job, she never seemed to take it seriously and spent more time planning for her next job. That's kind of what we saw in the first 3 years of her vice president. She really was risk averse, didn't seem to be interested in the job she had, but more interested in protecting her own political brand for the future. And I think when a politician hits that stage, the early stage of actually having to do the job, I think that's when they tend to lose their footing and stumble. And I think that's what Kamala Harris ended up looking like. And that's why her staff kind of abandoned her, because she wasn't serious about the office she was holding. And she was more interested in preparing herself to run for president.
Yeah, the reports were that she would fail to read the briefing materials that she was given by the staff, and then she would lash out at the staff for her not knowing information. And meanwhile, she just refused to do her homework. This wasn't in right-wing blogs that just hated Kamala Harris. This was reported even in the mainstream about her terrible behavior as vice president. But now, okay, so we're one day into her likely being the Democratic nominee. She does this first appearance yesterday. And this line, this soundbite, by now, you've seen it, our audience has heard it. It's everywhere. The Democrats are like, you go, girl. Because of this, it's SOT 4.
Before that, I was a courtroom prosecutor. In those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
So a little preview, Charlie, of, as they've been saying about her, she's a lifetime prosecutor, he's a criminal, reviving and hoping that the lawfare argument will make her seem elevated. And I'm sure she's going to go to the woman place too.
Well, that's so funny, because the people who are fake laughing and cheering in that clip are literally campaign staffers who are paid to be there. So that's why her work got so much of a pop. Also, the whole I'm a prosecutor ready to prosecute the case against Donald Trump. That's the same line they used in her failed presidential campaign. They wrung that statement to death, really trying to make the case that she was this brilliant lawfare person who could tackle Trump and really bring him to justice. Failed miserably in her last campaign. They're really hoping they can reboot it and bring it back. I even saw an op-ed, maybe we need Kamala the cop in 2024. Wow, that would not have gone over well in the last election.
Why don't you explain why she bailed BLM protesters out of jail, rioters out of jail? How did Kamala the cop handle that one? Stand by. Charlie stays with me. Quick break. Do you think America's heading in the right direction? If you do, you're in the minority. Unfortunately, the next generation does not understand the values that have made America the greatest nation on earth. But PragerU is trying to counter that. PragerU is a conservative nonprofit that promotes American values through educational videos. They're awesome. They're short. They're really informational. And they reach millions of young people every single day. Right now, PragerU has an amazing opportunity. If you donate any amount, and of course they would like as large as you'd like to give, but even if you just donate $1, they are going to send you PragerU American flag socks made in the USA. That's fun as a thank you. Make sure you go to prageru.com/socks to make your donation. Again, $1 would be great. More would be even better. You can support a great organization and express your love of American values in style while you do it. Your donation will help PragerU reach more people with their videos, which is needed now more than ever. Make a 100% tax-deductible donation at prageru.com/socks and get your socks today.
I feel that the future is bright and that we will have a new president who will be elected in 2020, and she will lead the nation with integrity and with a sense of fairness and justice, and she will be me.
Oh boy. Welcome back to the Megyn Kelly Show. Charlie Spiering, author of Amateur Hour, the deep dive on Kamala Harris out earlier this year, is back with me. That was Kamala Harris years before the 2020 election, predicting she was going to win and be the president. Give her 4 years, I guess she'd say, and she will get that old man right out of there and take over the top spot and then take on Donald Trump. It's just another version of Kamala Harris, her ambition and her cringiness. Ambition is fine. The cringiness I could do without. Biden called in to Harris's appearance at what was his campaign headquarters in Delaware yesterday. It was his. They had scrubbed his name. They already had Harris everywhere. And this is the first we heard him address the fact that he has withdrawn as a candidate. Let's take a listen to SOT 1.
I know yesterday's news was surprising and it was hard for you to hear, but it was the right thing to do. I know it's hard because you poured your heart and soul into me to help us win this thing, help me get this nomination, help me win the nomination, and then go on to win the presidency. But you're an amazing team. But we've got a great. I think we made the right decision. By the way, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be out there in the campaign with her, with Kamala. I'm going to be working like hell, both as a sitting president, getting legislation passed, as well as in campaigning. What we still need to save this democracy. And Trump is still a danger to the community. He's a danger to the nation.
All right. And that was his campaign manager that you could hear there. So didn't sound like he was knocking on death's door, Charlie, but we'll see him tomorrow when he gives an address from the Oval Office. Then there was a weirdness where she spoke with him. People are saying, she said, Joe, I know you're still on the call, and people are thinking maybe this was a recording, though it did sound like it was live. Whatever. We're going to see for ourselves tomorrow night how the man is, I think. But then she went back to her baby talk. This is another problem with her and her inability to project any sense of authority. Here's SOT 3.
Joe, are you watching? You hear this clapping? Can you see it?
I'm watching.
I knew it.
Is that an ongoing problem with this woman? And what's responsible for this? Because it's not only in the way she speaks to the president, it's in the way she explains Ukraine or space or school buses or Venn diagrams. I could keep going.
That's right. She has a long list of awkward moments on camera when she's trying to be light and fun and, in an attempt to connect with voters and sort of go viral in a way that is very reminiscent of the Obama era. Remember when all of Obama's sort of off camera moments or, anything that was captured off, cable, the official videos, right, were kind of spread spread quickly on social media and became a sign of like true authenticity. But Harris's moments go viral for all the wrong reasons, right? And it's so many. There's so many clips of painfully obvious attempts to sort of. She kind of speaks to audiences in very patronizing fashion, and right, even speaking to the president of the United States in that way. You know, it's clearly not very authentic at this point, but definitely trying to sell it as hard as she can.
Yeah, my kids would call it a sweaty tryhard. She's a sweaty tryhard, where it's just, you know, it's too much. You're like, it's just too on the nose. This just breaking via the New York Times. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries will endorse Harris for president today, right now. So, I mean, it's a done deal. The Democrats, I don't know if you want to say the fix is in, but they have absolutely no interest in letting the voters decide who's going to replace Joe Biden. None. They will decide, and they will shove those vegetables down your throat, and you will say thank you if you're a good little Democratic voter. That's really where we are right now. Going back, the biggest thing the Republicans seem to think they have on Kamala Harris is the fact that she was placed in charge of the border by Joe Biden. And to discuss and determine the root causes of it, to address it, no, none of that was done. I don't think even Kamala Harris could speak intelligently about the root causes of the border crisis, because she can't be honest about the fact that it was her boss and his policy and a decision that he made to open it up. There is this infamous exchange with Lester Holt that shows sort of the cluelessness and how little she cared about her newfound job. You would think this person who was so determined and worked so hard, Willie Brown's out there right now saying she outworks everybody. Well, he took office in January 2021. By June, she'd been the border czar, and she had this exchange with Lester Holt. By the way, after this exchange, it didn't get any better. She did eventually visit the border, but the border only got worse. Watch.
We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
Of course, the point is you should go so you can see for yourself what the problem is that you've now been placed in charge of. So how big a liability is that for her, do you think?
Well, the clip that you showed is peak Kamala, right? She reportedly she had trained for an answer on that question, and it shouldn't have been a surprise question. Republicans had been asking it for weeks. When is the Biden administration going to the border? And so when Lester Holt pops that question, she had a trained answer that she was supposed to give. But instead of that, she kind of went off the cuff to try to give something flippant, because she was clearly really annoyed by all of these repeated, even the media parroting this Republican question of why won't you go to the border? And right after she issues that flippant comment, she sort of uses her laugh to try to disarm the question. And that's peak Kamala Harris. Anytime she's in an uncomfortable moment, she tries to laugh it off and move forward. It didn't work.
It makes it more uncomfortable.
Right. And what's interesting is she made this comment after her visit to Guatemala. And when she had a press conference in Guatemala, she famously said to migrants, do not come. If you come, I believe you will be turned away. Those were her exact words. Wow. She did not send the message, and migrants did not hear that message. They just came over even faster. So it was clear that she failed the entire Border Czar project. When Chris LaCivita at the convention where we were both at last week, when he was asked what are Kamala Harris's biggest problems, he just looked at reporters and said two words: Border Czar.
Exactly. This will be pounded over and over. There's also the fact that she's a leftist progressive and she's woke. And this is not going to appeal to disaffected Democrats in her party. Maybe it'll energize progressives in a way that Biden didn't. But this soundbite's making the rounds. We've all seen it. Here she is during a CNN town hall and during a White House event, SOT 6.
Thank you, guys. And my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her. I am a woman sitting at the table wearing a blue suit.
My Lord. So there's an interesting piece out today. It's actually a Twitter thread that he dropped yesterday by Alex Castellanos, Republican, and he writes as follows: the test now for Kamala is to develop that new agenda that is more patriotic and less leftist, radical, and woke than Biden's. How far from wokeness and Biden will the left let her go? So what do you make of that? Like, because I remember dickmorris.com always used to tell me that Hillary Clinton, or that Bill Clinton was a liberal who governed as a centrist, and that he thought Hillary Clinton was actually a centrist who would govern as a liberal. So what's the truth about Kamala?
Oh, Kamala is a California Democrat. So she is, by reflexive nature, a very combative, hard-hitting leftist. And so, as we saw during the primary campaign, she tried to move as far as to the left as she could without even sometimes surpassing Bernie Sanders. I think there was that study during the campaign when Biden chose her to be the vice president, that she was more left than Bernie Sanders. So she's on the record as being very liberal on issues of immigration, issues of, DEI. She's, as vice president, she's campaigned she's campaigned for DEI and DEI principles, because she says, this is what, and during the campaign, she even had that video saying DEI is important because it is the equality of outcome, not just the equality of opportunity. So she believes in these ideas, and you can guarantee she's going to push them forward if she wins the presidency.
The hope, as I understand it, on the Democratic side is that she will come in, she will energize young, potentially female voters. Those are two different voting groups. That she can gin up excitement amongst young voters, maybe female voters, and also non-white voters who are not in love with Joe Biden. The worry is that she'll cost the Democrats with white voters and old voters and working class voters that had been sticking with Joe Biden, those who'd been sticking with Scranton Joe and hadn't migrated over to Trump. And there's a very interesting Quinnipiac poll out today that takes a look at one of those voting groups, and it's young voters. They polled July 19th through Sunday, July 21st, which was, of course, the day that Joe Biden announced he was stepping down and that Kamala Harris was being endorsed by him. So it's not all post her, ascension, but it was while everybody was speculating that it was likely to happen, and at least one day captured where he had stepped down and endorsed her. And in this poll, it shows that with young voters, meaning I think it's 18 to 34, Trump's advantage over Kamala Harris is 19 points. It's 19 points. What was Trump's advantage over Biden in that very same poll? Because they polled Trump v. Biden, Trump v. Harris. It was 17 points. So Trump in this poll does better with young voters against Harris than he was doing even with Biden. And if you look back at this poll, Deb, what was the earlier date that we looked at? What month? June. Okay, if you look back at June 26th, a month earlier, how were things going with young voters in that poll? Biden was up over Trump by 2. So Biden suffered a 19-point swing to the negative post-debate and post-assassination attempt with young voters to Trump, and Kamala Harris is down even more when it comes to young voters. Again, post-debate and post-assassination attempt, which, as we saw Mark Zuckerberg of Meta saying the other day, Trump looked very badass in that moment. And I think did cause a lot of people to see him a different way and maybe even feel somewhat inspired by him. So I don't know. I mean, my thought on this online was, Houston, we have a problem if the plan is she's going to rescue the youth vote for Democrats.
Right, Megyn, that kind of explains to me why they're pushing this TikTok version of Kamala Harris, who's so brat and so cool, and trying to really push for an authentic Kamala Harris they can sell to young people. Wow, they have so much work to do, because she spent her first 3 years as vice president with the only things going viral, not her inspirational speeches, not her key slogans, but the word salads have been sort of on top of mind of anybody who's consuming Kamala content on the internet.
What is brat? we played this little, like the music video yesterday, but it's like, what is it? Can you explain that?
I'm working on it, Megyn.
We don't know.
It's basically a girl who loves to dance and doesn't care who's watching and can be a little messy, but still confident in her personality. That's based on, I was just reading an article on our Daily Mail website from someone far more experienced in the term than me, but it's a good outline of the whole thing. Check it out.
I just threw up a little in my mouth. What's the story about her trying to recruit David Plouffe? Is that true?
Well, I saw all the mainstream outlets sort of mentioning David Plouffe as a possible candidate. And that's kind of what happens, as you know, Megyn, when somebody's trying to recruit somebody, but they don't necessarily feel like doing it. And so you're really trying to push it forward to make it happen. Either that or also get donors to feel comfortable enough about donating to the campaign. Donate to Kamala. Hey, she might have Obama's top advisor to help her out during the campaign. I even saw a report that suggested maybe Rahm Emanuel would leave his plush job as the ambassador of Japan to return and help save the country under Kamala Harris. That's probably not likely to happen. But yeah, they are in a real crisis. They need to get a senior team around them right now. But what political operative really wants this job, this thankless job, to try to remake Kamala Harris 100 days before the election?
I just think it's going to be so interesting over the next 100 days because, as I said, I think Team Kamala and the Democrats are going to blame everything on Joe Biden now. They're going to demonize Trump, yes, but they're going to try to blame all the inflation numbers and all of that. That was a Joe Biden problem. That wasn't a Kamala Harris problem. And my sense is that when they were more aligned, she was in the White House working under him, she was the receptacle for all of the thankless tasks he didn't want to touch. Right. Who would make her the border czar? He just wanted to dump it on her and say, and I'll tell you, I can't get specific about which organization it was, but sometimes even in the news business, when you have one show that's having trouble, they'll take another show in which they're not that wedded to the talent, and they will dump all of their bad news stories on the second to distract from what's happening with their favored stars and whatever drama's happening over here. So let's say outside magazines call up to say, oh my God, something terrible happened with your, favorite show. They say, oh, look over here, dumpster fire. And then that just becomes a bigger fire and resentments are bred. And I could see that may have happened to Kamala Harris, right? That Joe Biden just dumped, or the White House just dumped all the bad news cycles on her. She's a bully. She's nasty. She fucked up the border, all that stuff. And so now she's got 100 days to redefine herself. It's not a long time, but for that, they have only themselves to thank.
Right. And you have a lot of bruised egos from Biden's top team, right? The same ones that argued that he could pull it off, that he could keep going. Now those egos are bruised, and anytime Kamala Harris's team tries to throw him under the bus, they're going to be fiercely defensive of the president. So it's interesting. The way you described it, Megyn, reminded me of how Al Gore was when he was running for president to replace Bill Clinton, right? Or not replace Bill Clinton, but to succeed Bill Clinton. There were so many stories about how, he was struggling so hard just to be, approachable, to seem like a real person. And it was a real struggle between both camps just to get him, just to push him forward as a viable Democrat who could beat Bush.
Just seemed like a real person, for the love of God. Well, just yesterday.
And now we're cramming it all into 100 days, whereas before that it was a process of a couple of years. So it's going to.
But the media knows what they're supposed to do. I mean, just yesterday we were mocking online. A CNN writer had tweeted out, by the way, when Kamala was on the phone dealing with all this on Sunday, she was wearing sweatpants and she was ordering pizza. Like, oh, you mean like a human?
Not just
like, because we all do that.
Pizza with anchovies on top.
And then I'll give you this last piece. Okay, wait. Two things. Via the New York Times, Harris is expected to speak soon in Milwaukee. I mean, good luck with Wisconsin. I don't know. I don't think that's her voting base. They're already saying she's got to move on from the blue wall states and focus more on the Sun Belt, like possibly Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. The feeling being in Democrat circles, those states have more Black and Hispanic voters that she could potentially lure over because for them, everything is about skin color. If you're Black, you're going to vote for Kamala. If you're Hispanic, you're going to vote for Kamala. Check the polls. It's not true, Democrats. Anywho, she is spending some time in Milwaukee, and several people are holding up letters that spell, "Yes, we can," K-A-M. Again, so cringy. You remember Barack Obama, "Yes, we can." This is a play on her.
All the way
and I'll
back
leave
to
you with this
Obama.
one, Charlie. Michael Steele, he used to be a Republican. He used to run the Republican National Committee. Just tweeted out, "Hey, real Donald Trump, you ready for this?" And would you look at what he posted? It's Kamala Harris in, what is this, Captain America garb? I'm not a superhero. I'm not a superhero
Yeah, that's
person.
not Wonder Woman. That's definitely an attempt at Captain America.
Yes. And Kamala Harris has never looked so good in her life, but I'm sorry. She's their savior.
AI can do wonders.
Okay. We'll see. We're going to learn a lot over the next 3 months. Charlie, thanks for helping us get there.
You bet. Thanks so much, Megyn.
Okay, up next, we dive deep into the security failures that led to the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump with Mike Baker. And what's happening right now, and the reason we're going back to this, is because we're getting additional testimony on Capitol Hill about new facts. And we're actually learning who's doing this, who's pointing at whom. Listening audience, I'm pointing my fingers left and right at each other. Maybe making a little progress in getting down to who was responsible. And by the way, it had nothing to do with a sloped roof, as that's now been testified to. Stand by. Protein bars can be chewy and dense, or so chalky that they crumble apart in your hand. But I want to tell you about the launch of Magic Spoon Treats. You probably know Magic Spoon for their popular high-protein cereal, right? It has more than 75,000 five-star reviews. Well, Magic Spoon has turned their cereal now into high-protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's brand new treats come in 6 deliciously nostalgic flavors, including marshmallow, chocolatey peanut butter, blueberry, birthday cake, yum, and strawberry milkshake. Magic Spoon treats are a tasty time machine back to your childhood. You likely know Magic Spoon cereal, and now we are excited to bring you the news about the launch of their treats. Scoop up these new crispy, crunchy, protein-packed treats right now with 10% off just by going to magicspoon.com/MK or use the promo code MK when you place your order at magicspoon.com. Magic Spoon, hold on to the dream. Earlier today, Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle announced she would be resigning from the Secret Service in part due to her disastrous performance before Congress when they cross-examined her about the attempt on former President Trump's life. I mean, all she did was obfuscate. She was not there to help. She doesn't understand the stakes of this investigation, apparently, which not only affect President Trump, but President Biden. And don't forget, she went to the head of the Secret Service from being Jill Biden's security guard, her favorite Secret Service agent. But you know what? He's in danger too with leadership like Kim Cheadle. In that hearing yesterday, she just outright refused to answer even basic questions. Watch.
How many explosive devices were found on or near the site?
Again, I would have to defer you to the FBI.
Was Mr. Crooks acting alone?
Again, I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation.
Was he just a lone gunman?
I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation for motive.
Can you please give me the names of the individuals who are in charge of your conduct for the rally?
I'm not going to release names.
Can you give me the
today.
titles? And how many individuals?
No.
Nothing?
We had a full advance team that was responsible for advancing
How many
the site.
people are the final approval authority?
There are a number of people
Can you
that
give me a
are
number?
engaged in approving
Can you
the
give
plan.
me a number?
No, I do not have.
Okay.
Can a 20-year-old with his father's AR-15 assault weapon climb onto a roof without the Secret Service or local police stopping him?
And I would like to know those answers as well.
You keep referring to the FBI. Who at the FBI should I speak with? Wait for it. Wait for it.
The FBI is responsible for the criminal
Is there a name?
I'm not certain.
I'm not certain.
So frustrating. Today, lawmakers are searching for answers yet again. This is not over just because Kim Cheadle's agreeing to step down, which she should have done the day that this happened, the day of the attempted assassination. It's not over. We don't have any answers to any questions at all. A few were forthcoming today as lawmakers are questioning the Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner, who so far has been much more forthcoming. We'll play you some of that. Joining me now, Mike Baker, host of the President's Daily Brief podcast, available on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Mike, welcome back. Great to see you.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it very much.
Okay, so this guy had a different tact, and it was somewhat refreshing to hear actual answers come out. Let's see. Should we start with 32? South 32, where Representative Dan Bishop, he's a Republican in North Carolina, questions this gentleman, the police commissioner, Christopher Paris, on the location of the various officers on scene.
Had ESU maintained position in that window overlooking the roof, isn't it true that they would have had a clean shot at Mr. Crooks as he was ascending the roof to his shooting position?
I'm not prepared to say that because I don't know the exact timeline of events.
But it's your understanding, though, that they were no longer in that room where they had been previously overlooking the building at the time he was ascending the roof. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that question?
The ESU officers were no longer in that room where they could look out the window and oversee the roof as that video shows.
I believe they were actively searching along with additional municipal officers for Mr. Crooks.
Okay, so they're trying to get to why there weren't more eyes on the roof, the area around the roof, and when things hit the fan, where the local cops, the ESU, that stands for Emergency Services Unit, local, where they were, what they were doing. I don't know that we've solved that, Mike, but what we've gotten to now is a pretty clear picture that the Secret Service had pretty much nothing to do with that building. They completely delegated it to the locals. This guy testified that there were 32 members of local law enforcement there to support Secret Service, and that Secret State Police, and that Secret Service basically washed their hands of this building and these guys once the delegation took place. There were no comms between them. They weren't on the same comms line. That was another thing we learned. So like when the locals, presumably heard word, we're going to get to all that, from the rally goers, there's a guy on the roof, guy on the roof. It wasn't as easy as pressing down your comms button on your walkie-talkie and saying, hey, Secret Service, take out this guy. You're communicating only to other locals. And then on top of all that, Mike, we began the show with Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri saying he's had whistleblowers come forward to him to say that there was a guy who was dedicated to the roof. He got down from the roof because it was too hot. We went back and looked up the high in Butler, Pennsylvania that day, 76 degrees, all of which leaves us where?
Yeah, first of all, full marks to Kimberly Cheadle for being the first person to ever get Democrat Jamie Raskin and James Comer on the Republican side to agree on anything. And they both agreed after that disastrous hearing, 5 hours worth of nonsense, that she had to go. And she did resign, but obviously about 9 days later than she should have. Look, this was a series of critical mistakes from start to finish, from the very outset. And there's a methodology here. Let me start from there. There's a methodology to the security planning for an event, whether it's a rally or a sporting event or whatever it may be. And there's a difference between a national security event, which is something like the RNC or the DNC or the Super Bowl, where you have a year at least out to plan, right? And to dedicate resources. And obviously you're going to mass massive resources. And then there's the events like took place in Pennsylvania, campaign rallies, for instance. You have less notice, but you still have notice. Right? You still have time to plan, and you still have resources. So from the very beginning, the planning of this by the Secret Service, which has primacy, right? They can task and they can request and allocate resources from local and state police, but they're still in charge. They're still the ones who have to make that final call and say, yes, this plan looks good. So you go out and you do your advance. You put together the site survey, which includes everything: deployment of resources, responsibilities, communications plan, timeline, all the information that really anybody who has common sense would think, yeah, you ought to put that into the plan. And then you go from there. This breakdown was a series of failures, which is typical for a security process. It's usually not just one thing. So if we break it down and we say, look, what was the planning like? Well, now we know that Butler County, Washington County, and Beaver County, they all allocated some of their local resources to this event. Butler County was essentially command and control for the local resources, the emergency service unit that was discussed just during that SOT. But they had a meeting the morning of the rally, the 13th of July, in the morning, about 9 a.m. or so. They had a meeting of local officials, the sniper teams, the SWAT teams, patrol, all those local elements gathered together to discuss what was going to happen later that day. And guess who didn't attend? The Secret Service. For whatever reason, and that's another thing that we need to figure out, why didn't you feel it was important to attend this essentially final pre-op briefing, mission briefing, and go through it and say, you know what about this building here? I know that we said it's outside our perimeter, but what are you doing? And then they would have heard theoretically, well, we're going to man it from inside the building. Oh, okay. Well, why are you doing that? Why don't you cover down the rooftops? Why don't you take what is obviously a problem and resolve it? That didn't happen. Then you have the comms. I'm sorry to bang on about all this, but there's so many areas that we need to discuss.
It's interesting.
Then you have the communications issue. It's not unusual to have multiple frequencies in an operational setting. That's fairly standard, right? But because it's fairly standard, you also have command and control that works around that and allows you to communicate effectively, efficiently, and quickly, right? In real-time situations where things are heading south. They didn't have that. Communications for the SWAT team, I'm talking local police, the SWAT teams, the sniper teams from the local authorities, patrol from local authorities, those were operating on different frequencies, as were the Secret Service. So if patrol from a local authority saw crooks, which they did, and then they report it eventually, and they get it to the emergency services, the command and control for Butler County, those people hear it and go, oh, okay, got it. Now they got to sit around and think, well, what do we do about that? Well, let's move it forward. Eventually it makes its way to the Secret Service frequency, to the command and control of Secret Service. And that's, again, we don't know what that process was because Kimberly Cheadle decided to show up at this accountability and oversight committee hearing without what should have been archived communications records, right, from the Secret Service. So we know at about 5:10 p.m., Butler County, local authorities.
That's an hour before the shooting.
An hour before the shooting. Shooting took place at 11 minutes after 6 p.m. So about 5:10, they spot crooks, and they're concerned enough to, on their side, on the local authority side, say, oh, it's a suspicious person. How about that? And then a few minutes later, they take a picture of him. Okay, how about you confront him and ask what he's doing? And then roughly about 25 minutes later or so, that suspicious report makes its way, reportedly, we still don't know because we haven't seen those records because Kimberly Cheadle decided it wasn't important, makes its way to Secret Service. Then you've got the overarching massive question. You've got a report of a suspicious person. You're apparently looking for him now, by all accounts from local authorities. Now we're looking for him, including taking the person off the roof to go and assist or take the people out of the AGR building. So
or maybe he just came down because he was hot, but keep going.
At what point did they not realize that let's hold former President Trump in a secure site, keep him there until we resolve this issue? There are so many problems in this that, I mean, we can't cover it during the time that you've got with me, but it is astounding. I've been doing this for 40 some odd years. I hate to say it, in terms of risk and threat assessments, protecting individuals, facilities overseas in some very hostile environments. It's difficult. It's labor intensive. You have to be meticulous in your planning, but you do it over and over again, right? And it's not rocket science.
I got to ask you, I should remind my audience that you're former CIA, you've done security planning for massive events many times, but I kind of understand, I'm not excusing, but I'm starting to understand that the locals screwed up. If they were responsible for that building, then they screwed up. Ultimately, it's the Secret Service's fault. I get that too. They're the ones responsible for protecting the president. But the locals seem to have dropped the ball. They did not have somebody, it's unquestioned. No one was up there when Crooks got up there. And I don't know whether he left because he was hot. He was never there. It was a sloped roof. We all know that's not true. But for whatever reason, nobody was up there, and that was a failing. So I don't understand, though, Mike, how we got to the point where the director of the Secret Service, I understand nobody wants to blame each other. You know, it's a nice principle, but a man's dead and a former president was almost shot dead. So now we're going to have some hard conversations with real truths. Why wouldn't Kim Cheadle just come out and say, we delegated responsibility for that building to the locals. The locals should have had somebody on the roof. They didn't. That was a failing. It's on them. And yes, ultimately, it is on me. Instead, we got this nonsense. I'll play it here because she went on ABC News. And as the lawmakers pointed out yesterday, she seems to have answered way more questions with ABC than she would in front of our lawmakers, who are us. They're representing us. But this, instead of just saying what I just said, she said this in SOT 27.
Roof have been secure, period.
That building in particular has a sloped roof at its highest point. And so, you know, there's a safety factor that would be considered there, that we wouldn't want to put somebody up on a sloped roof. And so, you know, the decision was made to secure the building from inside.
Explain that to me.
Yeah, well, I guess from my perspective, 4 decades worth of being engaged in intelligence and security operations around the world. And that is the stupidest statement I've ever heard come from a security expert.
Number one.
And look, she's got almost 30 years in with the Secret Service, so she's not stupid by any means, right? It's a failure of leadership. It's a complete breakdown in crisis communications management and strategy. This is 101 for crisis communications. How they botched this after such an awful result on that rally day in Pennsylvania, I have no idea, because you're exactly right. That's what she should have come out and done, and said, we will, and not only that, but we will get you answers immediately. The nonsense during the accountability hearing when they said, or she said, we're working on that internal review and we're going to get a report in maybe like 60 days.
It's ridiculous.
That's astounding. And so,
Mike, especially because look what period we're in right now in American politics. This will be the 60th busiest days that Donald Trump has had, and now Kamala Harris will have in the course of the last year. This is the lead up to the presidential election. They're going to be everywhere. It's going to be nonstop rallies, outside, inside, big events, conventions. It's not okay to say, in 2 months, we think we'll have it figured out. There's no urgency. And this is the thing that just keeps tripping me up as not a security expert, but just as a lawyer. She lied. The sloped roof thing is a lie. And everybody knows that by now, but I will show you, because Representative Eli Crane, he's a Republican from Arizona, went up to the roof, and this has gone viral online, and he kind of brought us through what the roof looks like, just to put a fine point on it. It's, I think, SOT 30.
It's not that steep at all. We just had a 70-year-old man back here climb up on the roof easily. See that water tower behind me? Had Secret Service or anybody had sniper teams up there, this guy wouldn't have made it 5 feet up this roof. He would have been taken out. Behind me, you see the windows that Secret Service was supposedly in the second floor of this building behind. Makes you wonder why they weren't able to quickly dispatch the individual. And then behind me, back over here where those red roofs are, that's where the stage was set up. That's where the president was giving his speech from. A lot of questions here in Butler. I mean, so flat you can pour cake batter on it. So that's where I get caught up. She lied. So
Now, how do we get to the bottom of why she lied? She's still she could be subpoenaed. She's not like free to ignore them just because she's stepping down.
Right.
And I don't know, how does this look to you now if you factor in lying? Does it still look like massive incompetence or something even worse?
No, I think it's massive incompetence. Frankly, look, I spent long enough time in government to know that, there's some wonderful people working there and there's some, deadwood. And, so it's not unlike any large corporation in a way. You got great people, you got less than great people, you got people just kind of skating by. So, this is different though. This is a situation where you've got an agency that's their primary function, protecting the lives of their protectees. And every single time out, right, you need to get it right. And that's a burden, right? Because it's like in counterterrorism. You have to get it right every time. The bad guys just have to get lucky once, right? But that demands that you do everything according to protocols, according to the methodology that gives you that best possible result. And that's where this fell apart. And so it's compounded, as you pointed out, by the after action. And that is, I'm just as confused as anyone else, because I have no idea how somebody in that position could be, even if she's not the brightest bulb in the box, they've got other people there who should be advising and saying, here's what we need to do. Get an answer. Get to the rally site tonight, right? The evening of that. They should have flown out to that site. She should have been on the ground.
All hands on deck.
And demonstrating leadership, right?
Yes. I'm thinking about Jocko Willink and his extreme accountability approach to life. And when he was a SEAL, and he has a viral TED Talk on it, and he's been on the show talking about it. This is the opposite of that. What we should have seen was the locals, the guy who put the building outside the security perimeter, the guy who was supposed to be on the roof or who chose for whatever reason to be inside the building as opposed to on top. At least those guys and more should have been saying, it was my fault. I take responsibility. It was on me. And Kim Cheadle, chief among them. What we have instead is no one saying anything. And now the Secret Service trying to quietly behind the scenes blame the locals, even though it's their responsibility. And now the locals blaming the Secret Service. So this is what we're learning from the questioning today. On the building where the shooter was and who was in charge, the state police commissioner, we just showed you, said that they believed that the Butler ESU, Emergency Services Unit, they were responsible for that building. And he said 2 people were in the building and that they were in a window, like watching. And that at a certain point, they began searching for Crooks, the shooter, and they left the window to go search for Crooks. But meanwhile, that too would be a gross security failure, Mike. I don't have to tell you, even I, as somebody who's had to be protected by guards at certain points in my life, understand that if you have 2 security guards and there's a threat coming, one always stays with the target that they're there to protect. The other goes and searches. They don't both leave because we all know what could happen. The bad guy could come to the now unprotected building and do the very thing that you're afraid he might do. So that just doesn't make any sense. And if it does, it's really stupid. And then the second piece is they said that they're now claiming in this testimony, local authorities told Secret Service they did not have the manpower 2 days before this happened to take on the task of that building. The Butler Township manager, Tom Knights, said that the message was sent to Secret Service 2 days before the Trump rally. His team could only handle traffic control. And they claim, this is according to actually KDKA TV reporting, the Secret Service never responded to those messages. Now, again, this to me just feels like classic blame game. Like, well, yeah, we were responsible, but we told them we couldn't be responsible, and they never got back to us, and therefore we just let the president get shot. But it's still on them.
Yeah, that all falls in the bucket that's marked, failure to communicate, right? And you're right. When going back to the coverage inside that building, right, when they decided to leave their post to go look for the suspicious character, again, first and foremost, why didn't one person remain? Why didn't they also notify saying, hey, we're going to be leaving post, looking for suspicious character. That information should have been relayed immediately. If it wasn't, again, we don't know because they haven't, provided that information. Was it relayed immediately to Secret Service? And again, going back to the top line question, why wouldn't you hold a protectee off site in a secure location until you resolve these problems, which were unfolding over the course of an hour? So all of this, the answer to all of this is, and as you pointed out, we've got a very busy political season staring us in the face. And it demands immediate action because they need to understand now how this fell apart so that it doesn't happen again. And look, the hardworking men and women of the Secret Service, including those on the stage that covered down former President Trump, right? They have got to be, and I know that they are, embarrassed at the responses from the leadership, from Kimberly Cheadle at the Secret Service. And they should expect and deserve better, right? For better top cover. But also, Kimberly Cheadle probably should have shown up at that oversight and accountability hearing with the agents in charge for that day in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Who were involved in the site survey from the Secret Service side. She wouldn't
even give their names, Mike. She wouldn't even say who those people are.
Communications.
We're 10 days out. We still don't know any names except for hers. And up until 2 hours ago, she wouldn't step down or actually take responsibility. She was giving it lip service, but she wasn't actually taking responsibility. She kept saying, the buck stops with me, the buck stops with me, but it certainly didn't look like it.
Yeah. I don't think she knows what that phrase means. I think she was very confused by that. And clearly the buck didn't stop with her. She spent all her time trying to box it up and pass the buck. And then she did also say during this committee hearing that she's the best person to lead the Secret Service at this time.
Oh, wow.
I mean, honest to God, I mentioned it, I think this morning on the President's Daily Brief. I would rather have seen Paul Blart, the mall cop, running the Secret Service than Kimberly Cheadle.
Yes. Honestly, it's like there's only so much you can do. I mean, President Trump is a rich man, but even he, it's very tough to hire private security and have them stationed like counter snipers on every building, everywhere you go. There's a reason we give our former presidents Secret Service protection and certainly our nominees for president. And this is, we already know that the Iranians had a potential hit out on him after Soleimani. So all the threat around him was raising, and yet there wasn't an adequate response. So let me ask you this. I was watching President Trump. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I'm sorry. I was going to say you raised the Iranian threat issue. And again, inconsistency in what we're hearing from the Secret Service, because at one point they said, look, we were aware of that Iranian threat ahead of the Pennsylvania rally, so we enhanced his security package, right? And now we're also hearing some information that says, you know what, ahead of that rally, the Secret Service wasn't planning on sending sniper teams and had advised local authorities that they were going to have to heavy up on that side of things, right? And then they eventually decided to provide 2 counter sniper teams. So there are so many inconsistencies. And yes, the public deserves to know how this thing fell apart. But more importantly, we need to get it right? We need to get that information internally. And that needs to well,
that leads me to my question now that I was going to get to.
Yeah.
I was watching Trump in, I guess it was Michigan, right? The first appearance he made after the Republican National Convention. And all I could think was, I realized that Trump has behaved in almost a superhuman kind of way in the wake of this assassination, but he is not superhuman. He's human. And he's got to be feeling somewhat jittery it's not like he has a whole new team or he no longer uses Secret Service. He's still reliant on them and has got to go to rally after rally after rally. And all I could think is there's got to be something inside of him that's like, oh my gosh, this is a little scary to be right back in front of all these people. And I don't know who I can trust and whether we really have adequate protection here. How are you feeling about it with 100 days left to this election process?
Well, look, I know a lot of the folks who work the streets, work operations for Secret Service, the Bureau, and other organizations. And they're terrific people and they work every day, right, to make this right. But there was no doubt, clearly, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, and this is a statement of the obvious, but there were failures that day that need to be addressed, right? And so there should be consequences. The folks who are on site in charge, right, those are the people that need to be, and I'm sure they are. They're doing a hot wash inside the Secret Service, and the Bureau is also doing part of their investigation to look at this, but we need to get that sorted out. I have confidence. I know it sounds odd. I have confidence in the Secret Service because I know the men and women who do the job, right? I don't know the leadership.
The rank and file, they try their hardest, that's for sure. And now that they know, they've been reminded just how serious it is, that won't hurt either. Mike, I got to run. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Absolutely, Megyn. Thank you very much.
I want to tell you, folks, President Biden has just emerged from isolation. He's heading to the White House, leaving Dover Air Force Base. You can see him leaving his presidential limousine. Is he wearing a mask? I can't tell. I don't think so. He's holding a mask. He's slow moving, but he does appear to be there and living. More on that tomorrow.